Welcome to Socialcast, your go-to place to learn about marketing, the latest social media news, and insights. Brought to you by Social Bakers.
Hi everyone. In this next episode, we speak to Christina from Social Bakers. Christina works a lot with our sales teams, and she's also in charge of the field marketers. The topic today is how to bridge sales and marketing. What's needed for that cooperation between the departments? What kind of processes do you need in place? And what kind of mindset? Welcome to the Social Bakers podcast. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us, Christina. It's really cool to have you on. So Christina is running our, maybe you can describe your job rather than me. I think that would be better.
Thanks, Mantas, for having me. Really happy to be here and speak about this very, very important topic. So my job, essentially, I lead field marketing and account-based marketing teams at Social Bakers. Both mean that my team and I, we are trying to bridge the gap between the sales teams overseas and globally and headquarters in marketing. And the second thing, we are trying to work with the teams that are working globally on larger enterprise global deals and going after larger prospects to work with those teams to get better results. So yeah, in both aspects, we are trying our best to bridge the sales and marketing
It's not
gap.
always easy. You always look very busy, so from the outside, it looks like an impossible task.
It is, actually it is possible. It is very possible, and it's become trendy in the recent few years just to talk about it a little bit more. But the bigger players in the industry have been already doing this for a while. Like HubSpot has been suggesting the smarketing concept for several years now. So Marketo has been doing it very, very successfully. So the fact that a lot of companies are now jumping on to this topic and trying to talk about it, trying to create a bridge first between the two departments, start conversations. It's because those companies who have already implemented some strategies and have already done some work towards that are showing great success.
Right.
So the trend itself isn't new, but the understanding of it, the understanding of the importance and the urgency, actually, not even just important, it's really now down to how fast you will be able to connect your two departments, essentially.
Let's just stop here for a second. So just to be completely clear, so what is the challenge that we're talking about in this podcast? So we have the sales side of every company and the marketing side, and it's I suppose, how do you connect the two is the question that we want to answer today. What's getting in the way of it as well?
So let's start from the beginning. Like, how do you connect and why do you connect? So if we take a look into just marketing itself by itself. Marketing itself is a little bit of one way towards the audience thing. Of course, we listen to our audience. We are trying just our best to understand what our audience wants, what works, what doesn't work, what our community is expecting from us, etc. We create the customer journeys. We cater towards customer journeys. We cater towards the personas that we create. However, if we just work from marketing, it still is kind of like a one-way direction towards the audience work. While when it comes to sales is already two ways. The way they talk to the customers, they essentially interact with the customers directly, whether trying to sell, whether trying to make them adopt what they have already sold, whether trying to upsell, whether trying to cross-sell, etc. So in order for companies to be successful and towards the end goal of the business, of course, is to just bridge these two sides of let's say cycle.
Right.
So to kind of like bring those two things together. So ideally, like in the ideal case scenario, the customers should be the same. Those who
something's not
marketing,
working right. They're
yeah.
different customers.
If the marketing is bringing leads that the sales teams cannot sell to, so there is something wrong with that, and that's where the importance of this bridging the gap comes, where you kind of try to identify, like, is it what we bring aren't good enough, or is it what they're selling, the way they're selling isn't good enough? So let's just kind of try and understand which one to improve and optimize and pivot maybe sometimes, because some conversations from the sales team can be even your like next on your product's roadmap even.
Right.
So if the sales teams are selling things that the marketing hasn't still kind of tried to crack the code on, and it's working, and they're selling on things that marketing hasn't marketed yet, that means there is a potential of that being maybe on your roadmap.
Interesting, yeah.
So that's why it's very, very important. These two departments work closely together, share feedback from each side. Marketing shares, this is what works from us. Organically, people come to us for this and this and this and this things. And the sales says, oh, these conversations work better rather than the other ones. So this is like, because they are usually in the market, they are in the field, they talk to the buyer just regular basis. Because if we imagine ourselves as buyers, our buyer persona changes, our buying habit changes every single day almost. So that's why it's really important to understand this and gap this both sides.
Right, especially if the cycle is really long, then both departments become just critical to getting it right.
Yeah, exactly.
May I come back to an earlier point that you mentioned? So you kind of started talking about how this entire thing started, and I'd like to come back to that. So why, because it's such a trendy conversation right now, and why is it now? Is it something to do with digital, or was it just something that was eventually going to happen sooner or later?
Well, I think digital is part of it, because again, like your customer isn't, if you compare to before, you would again market, you would bring all those leads, and then that would go to the customer, and we wouldn't, in some cases there wouldn't be like a feedback at all.
Right.
So, but then the digital came, and every single type of customer is now online. And all of us almost know who is after what, who is partnering with what. It's really easy to actually understand that we weren't able to sell in the end. Or we were able to sell, or our competitor was able to sell. So it's really easy, like it's become transparent almost to see where there is a gap. So that's why I think it's actually a good opportunity for the companies to bridge this gap.
Yeah, and I imagine when you start sort of putting data to it and looking at the data, many companies probably their jaws dropped at how misaligned.
Exactly. Yes. Because if you think about it, it's not just the marketing and sales that are online now. Every single department is online now, and I think the next trend is going to be all the department alignment, because your HR is probably like more active than your other department. So this is like really this trend is just going to continue. The first is the sales and marketing, because it's easier. There's two very big and important parts of the business that spend money essentially. So that's why like it started from there, but the trend is just going to continue, and we're going to push towards more like unified customer-centric strategies.
All right,
and
so
I'm very excited about that.
that sounds super exciting. That sounds like, wow, the future is pretty bright. I
think
can't
so.
wait to get there.
Yeah.
But there's probably steps before we get there. And then I think you started talking about it a little bit in terms of what's really different between the sales and the marketing. And you mentioned there are different parts of the cycle and so forth. But what else is there? Are we just different people, different goals? Why is there friction?
Different people, I don't know. I think companies tend to hire like closer to the company culture. So I would like to think that we aren't different people, essentially. But we do have different goals, or most of the companies have different goals. In some companies, or like majority of the cases, marketing would give leads, and then there is some sort of lead scoring, and then the sales would just, like, not leads, let's say leads and MQLs, and then assignments to the sales teams, and then they would try to convert them to business. So, however, in marketing's case, it's not just the assignments that marketing brings on the table. So, brand awareness is one of the things, like PR and a lot more. Employee branding, it's a huge trend. So marketing caters almost all the departments, and just bringing leads is one of them. So, but I will stop just only in this part. What can go wrong there? Simply the scoring of the lead, the way you understand versus the way sales teams understand could be really completely two different things.
So what are some of the differences?
First of all, just to agree, is this like scoring good enough? Is this gonna work for both of you? That we can talk about technicality, or technical qualification of the lead, and we can talk about buying intent.
Right.
So ideally, an assignment that's been passed to the sales team has to have both combined together towards a certain scoring, the way your scoring works in general. It is very important that you both teams agree on what is the scoring. Do we want assignments with more buying intent and less technical quality, or that's 100%? There has to be both sides, and then it's actually up to the sales team. It's kind of like the pressure shifts a little bit on the sales team. So let's say if you both agree that the technical qualification of the lead or assignment, or whatever way you want to put, is more important. Let's say it's the right company, it's the right job title you're after, that it's the right department and stuff like that. Let's say if you agree that just bring me technically qualified leads, assignments, and then my sales teams would do the identifying buying intent, and then just trying to sell whatever suits their needs. So then it's easier, I guess, for marketing to bring those. But then the pressure is on marketing to provide enough quantity and enough good quality, technical quality, for the sales team to be able to actually work with it. So now if you agree on, I'm just talking about like various scenarios. So if you agree that, and some companies do agree on, both have to be like met, both criteria have to be met, technical quality and buying intent. And that could mean request a demo, or try a certain feature, or contact us. So really, it's when they say contact me, or when they request a demo call, that's essentially a buying intent. So,
or I suppose if we talk outside of B2B, it could be something like sign up for like a test drive, or sign up
exactly
for,
yes, exactly. So yeah, outside of B2B, that could be something like that. So, but in B2B, again, this is like B2C, it's like almost a one-person decision-making job, while
Right.
in B2B, the
complex.
committees are bigger. And if we're talking about large companies, the buying committee is even larger, it's more complex, it's diverse in terms of job functions and departments and team functions and what each team is trying to solve. So that's why agreeing on the qualification of what goes passes through funnel and goes to sales, it is very, very, very critical. So
it's really critical, but so the truth lies somewhere in that balance between the agreement. But how do you come to that agreement? Who comes to this agreement?
Well, I think that is one of the biggest challenge companies are facing. So because that's when you see like a successful presentation at a conference or something, and people brag about just cracking that code and just having a successful marketing and sales team collaboration and having great results, which, by the way, the results are like sometimes 3, 5, 7 times higher than anticipated even. So it doesn't matter. People just, the first question and a lot of questions are being just asked on how. And I think each company, it is different. Depends on, first of all, depends on how the leadership from top bottom is constructed, and how there is a strong executive support towards the bridging the gap. You know, it's like one thing that you are trying to bring together. Another thing, if you're in a large organization, another thing is if you don't have executive support behind you, it's really like it's almost impossible. So it's like the will, first of all, the will of doing that. Because it's not easy. It's like sales, essentially if you describe a few 3, 5 different things, what needs to be done is like work together, open up towards each other, you know, don't work in silos, discuss your failures together, let each other listen to each other's phone, like sales conversations, be part of creating the marketing strategy for the sales team. So it's kind of like blurring the sales and marketing line. And in conservative, of course, industries and companies, it is hard. People, it's not an easy thing to just say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, come and join and listen to my sales team's calls, or hey, instead of doing this type of content, you should do the other type of content, because so that's why it actually requires a unified will and unified understanding of the end goal and result.
I can see how that can create a lot of friction, and well, maybe it comes back to our previous point that we are maybe people to some degree, and people don't like to sometimes expose their data, their information, their metrics, and I can imagine how difficult it is to convince people to do that.
But I think if you want to succeed, there is no other choice. Yes, because that's how, like, otherwise it just becomes a loop where people just, it's easy to blame each other on things.
Right.
And it's like, oh, the assignments or the leads that you gave me weren't good enough. Oh no, you didn't sell well enough. And unless you open up, unless you really break these walls and just like be transparent and open and really have this unified will to solve something for your customer, unless you do that, I think, it always will be like, oh, this is bad or that's bad, you know.
Yeah. Well, you went through like a list of things that you can do. Is that what you'll find in any listicle that you Google about this, or is there something else?
I think each company, again, finds their own way of doing it, taking into account their internal processes and, of course, internal politics. So each company will have to find their own code. But like if you think about generic terms, that probably will be like agreeing on the deliverables, agreeing on opening the doors to each other. So and kind of like working, collaborating towards each other better. I'm trying to.
Yeah, there's probably there's other tactics, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we work in the marketing department, and I always like to feel like that there's something that I can do, but you painted that it really has to come from the top. Is there something outside of that we as marketers can do in our departments? And then maybe a bit on the sales side as well. What can the sales teams do if their marketing department isn't budging?
So let's say ideal way would be not just like, and when I say open the doors, and it doesn't mean like create a creative chaos. It means probably the best way would be like to create a console between the two departments, to choose some people from each department. It could be switched, for example, time after time, and then do regular meetings with each other. And then talk about, from marketing side, talk about what worked for them, meaning the audience lookalikes, what we brought that is closer to our buyer or to our customer. Right. And then try and educate, train the sales teams with pitch strategies, maybe even. And from the sales teams also just come back with feedback, and not just about the lead in general, but like what's the frequently heard commentary, what would they want, so that could be one way to bridge it. If you just, because of course if you have like hundreds of salespeople and hundreds of marketing people, you just can't create this mess. You have to be a little organized, so you kind of choose people and then you can swap these people.
Well, yeah, makes perfect sense. I think
that's how we do it. At least
that's what gets in the way. But I think it's just so human. Even for me, it's just to admit that something on your side hasn't worked. Like it's difficult as a marketer who has spent your time on a campaign and just hearing from the sales teams like, look, it's not really particularly aligned, and you're like, no, it has to. But sometimes it just can't, and that's okay, right? There has to be a culture where that's okay for that to happen.
That is perfectly okay, because if everybody tried things and everything went well and it worked, then so I don't know where we would be. Yeah. However, now currently we live in an era where everything is so accessible. There is so much data accessible to prove this way or another. Like if you have put a campaign and you think it's working, I'm pretty sure you're able to prove that with data. And that goes also from the sales teams. If they say, okay, I made 100 calls and none of the leads that you provided, and you see it, the data is there, and none of the calls went well because they didn't know what I was talking about, you gave me wrong leads, that's also kind of provable. So in some ways, it's right now our job is really easy because there is so much data to prove this way or the other way. So, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. If it didn't work, it didn't work. It's not the end of the world. So
yeah, I suppose if you're afraid to admit faults, then it is scary. We have to get past it. But something that's pretty critical, I think, what you mentioned is that this has to come from someone at the top. So how do you know that you're that person? Is it the CMO? Is it the CEO? Where does this sit?
Again, depends on the structure of the company. Some cases can be just the head of sales, and marketing. In some cases, it could be like even higher and even higher. So it actually depends on how structure and politics, as I mentioned before. So it depends how your process is currently working.
Right. Well, do you
and
have...
also the infrastructure, where it belongs and where it sits, and
who's doing measurement, I suppose,
exactly.
as well.
So it all just depends on. There is no one single formula for this one, other than just the wheel again.
Well, okay. So you could find yourself in different parts of the company where all of a sudden you find yourself with this responsibility of bridging marketing and sales. So what do you do? Who do you go talk to? What should your couple of next months look like?
If we are talking about our experience, we are lucky because in our case it is being strongly supported and sponsored by our leadership teams. And if we're talking again our experience, both sides are on board on bridging this gap. So it makes it easier. And whatever I mentioned, this opening up and being transparent and really accepting each other's faults and trying to work with this, it is already happening. And we are probably like some of the rarest lucky ones, because I can see how that could totally go wrong,
right.
You know. So that's why. Like what we do is again this consults, joint meetings, and simply sitting down and looking at data. This worked, this didn't work, and without hard feelings, without taking anything personally, you know, like just data says everything,
right.
You know.
So that's
that's how we
good for us,
kind
you
of,
know.
We are working towards it. Of course, there is plenty of work to do. There is also like again agreeing, refining, defining, redefining your deliverables, because it's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
The deliverables change if your strategy change, or if not even the strategy, the way your growth strategy changes, so the deliverables change. So that's why it's like keeping it a little like agile, flexible, but also having the organized process in mind. So always making your agile strategy work towards the end goal. So.
Okay, well, what if you find yourself in not such a lucky position as social bakers and people don't want it, but you know that, look, if we don't fix this, we're screwed?
Data should be one way to prove, and if showing data you aren't able to still prove that, then you're in a wrong place, definitely. Because if you are, as a marketer or as a salesperson, doesn't matter, like from each side of the spectrum, if you're able to show that, like more organized approach shortens your sales cycle, makes the deal size bigger, and other things like customer adoption we can speak about. Like if you show that a more organized approach has better results than opportunistic approach, then, and it is very easy to show. If you do like a more structured, more coordinated, more cooperative work towards a certain account, it will show better results.
There is no doubt. How much time are we talking about? Like, what's your?
I think like 6 months, 9 months. If we're talking about large deals, it would be a good timeline to take a look at. Like not earlier than 6 months,
right? And
then 6 months would show patterns, definitely. And also, like if you compare and show that the opportunistic approach kind of the customer adoption or stickiness is just low, or like this sales cycle is just going on and on and on, and then you had a chance to have a bigger deal but you didn't. So if you are able to show these numbers and people still don't believe that this sales and marketing have to come together, then I'm sorry for that person. I can't say much because there is no other way, really.
Yeah, then
So,
I guess you gotta start looking for a different job.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you painted a really bright future, and you mentioned also this concept that HubSpot sort of created. Is that really what you think we're gonna have a couple of years from now? A sort of joint venture?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed that it happens sooner than later. I think when I first read about it, like several years ago, I actually predicted it was going to come much sooner. So if I was to bet, I would be wrong. So because I found it such, like, it's a common sense, and it of course, how else would you do it? So, but then it didn't happen as fast as I kind of hoped for or would want it to happen. So, but now I think there are more and more talks about it. There are more and more talks about account-based marketing, which is a very, very big part of this bridging the gap together. So I'm hoping that it's really close. I don't want to bet again and be wrong, but I think it's going in the right direction, and there is no other way.
Yeah, I'd like to root for rationality as well. If we can get over past our personal sort of fears.
So at least maybe it will start from just having marketing teams and then the first customer-facing teams together. I don't know how it can be business development, SDRs, BDRs, and stuff like that. At least probably up until there, it is slowly happening, because I can see many companies that bring BDRs, SDRs under marketing, and they sit together. I know in Marketo, they if I remember correctly from one of their presentations, the keynotes, that they had to sit together in one room and and then kind of like work with each other, listen to each other. Now there are software, so I guess it's a little different. But I remember hearing this kind of amazing stories, how they just came together, they sat next to each other, and they worked together.
And I imagine when we're talking about a company like Marketo, it's people who have never really seen each other.
I can imagine, yes. To be honest, I don't remember exactly if they were talking about one regional group or there was a mix of groups, but I remember vividly that it was something that their account-based marketing team and their team did, and then the BDRs and then marketing team. So two experiments, and both worked super well, and the results were really really great. So.
Okay. So there's really hope for us.
So I hope, I really want to hope that it's coming. So.
Yeah, and I suppose the end goal is.
Business.
It's business.
Business.
It's also probably, I'd imagine, customers who are sort of satisfied with the entire customer experience from it. And anything else that's?
Well, that will probably shift towards having the same goals for sales and marketing, or at least marketing will have. The teams that will work with the sales teams will not have KPIs as bring leads or 10 leads or whatever, like KPIs like amount of leads, amount of qualified leads, but there will be amount of business. And then I think the teams will just do the backwards calculations of how many salespeople they have, how many businesses per team, per person it's being closed, what's the average size. So do all this math and calculations, and if the size of the leads or the amount of the leads that they have to bring is 5 one month and then 500 the next month, it will be just adjusted towards the end goal. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is the customer journey, which also with the digital transformation is not just sales and marketing anymore. We spoke a little bit about this, but it's all like your
The
product
departments.
teams are already on social media doing some podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
So like how they will be the next thing. Your HR team is probably doing employee branding and they are very active on social. So the next step would be just to work with marketing closely with a unified message, with unified design and customer experience. So, and I'm very excited about us marketers because essentially our roles are expanding and it is a really, really interesting trend to follow and be in and work in. So
yeah, that's what a fantastic sort of positive note to, I think, finish the conversation. I think it's, I'm looking forward to that future.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Christina. If I'd ask this question to you, who should the audience share this podcast with in their teams?
Definitely like their sales leaders. And the people who train, educate the BDRs and the marketing leaders, not just the leader, because this isn't just about like two people talking to each other, but the key people in marketing and key people in sales. And sometimes key people in sales could be, the pre-sales who actually create content for that market. Right. It could be the consultants, it could be the salespeople, it could be the account managers who work with certain accounts. So just the key people in sales and in marketing, it could be content, it could be the acquisition team, it could be the email marketing team. So kind of like
there's a lot of people.
The key people in both departments, so they can identify. I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, if you're one of those listeners, it's so cool that you joined. It's really awesome, and if you're not, you know who to share it with. So thanks a lot, Christina.
Thank you, Matas, for having me. So. And I hope, and in a few years, we will discuss this and we'll just bring up some of the predictions and just see
when it finally happened, completely aligned. But
so.
I hope we can have you back sooner than that.
Yeah,
So, we'll
definitely
hear from you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Matas.
Thanks. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and then we'll see you in our next episode. Bye-bye.